Hey everybody, I'm Maggie.
And I'm Amber.
And this is Crime Country. Today we're in Rhode Island. Rhode Island is the smallest of the 50 states and the 7th least populated, with a little over 1 million residents. But since it's so small, that still makes it the second most densely populated state.
Yeah. It's pretty teeny.
It's itty bitty. So it has like 1,050,000 people, but it's still the second most densely populated state. It's pretty interesting. Wow. It's known for its sandy shores and seaside colonial towns. Providence is the capital of Rhode Island and is home to Brown University. The state of Rhode Island is actually not an island, but it does have a small island like off the coast that's part of the state, and the entire state is named for that island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never knew that before.
Me neither. If you visit Rhode Island, you can tour Brown University. You could also see many of the gorgeous beaches across the state. You can visit lighthouses, or you can tour some Gilded Age mansions. So Gilded Age mansions are mansions that were built by like the richest people in the country between 1870 and the early 1900s. There's Gilded Age mansions across the country, but more so in like wealthier colonial states. There's some in California too, actually, but there's quite a few in Rhode Island and New England. And they're these mansions that were built in the United States between 1870 and the early 1900s by the like uber wealthy, and they basically are just castles that rich people wanted to live in the United States. They're insanely huge and like gorgeous. The most popular one in Rhode Island, it's called The Breakers. I don't know why, but it's a Vanderbilt mansion in Rhode Island. It's now a National Historic Landmark, and you can visit it year-round. It's a 70-room Italian Renaissance-style mansion. It's absolutely insane. It's 70 rooms.
That's humongous.
There's hotels that don't have 70 rooms. Like, that's so crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And it's like so over the top with like chandeliers and huge ballrooms, and it's absolutely insane and would be really cool to visit.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. Some weird laws in Rhode Island include you cannot throw pickle juice on a trolley.
All right. And pickle juice.
Yeah. And when I first read that, I thought it meant like you can't throw pickle juice at like a passing trolley. But then I thought about it and was like, well, that's dumb. You probably can't throw pickle juice while you're riding a trolley. I mean, they're probably both illegal, so just don't throw pickle juice.
Yeah. I mean, why? That's so weird. I guess that's why it's the weird law section. Because who throws pickle juice, and like, why is it a law? Like, what happened? Someone threw in pickle juice for it to become a law that you can't throw pickle juice off a trolley or at a trolley.
And were they serving a lot of pickles on trolleys so people just had the juice and would throw it? Like, what's the backstory?
I just walk around with my jar of pickles in my fanny pack and just have all my pickles in my pickle juice, you know?
Call it my pickle fanny.
Pickle fanny. That would be pretty fun, actually. Someday maybe I'll have maybe not a fanny pack, but like, I don't know if this is a thing, but I swear I've seen it. Like a thing that you hook to your belt buckle that's like a can koozie, but it's like a pickle koozie. You can just put your jar of pickles in there.
That's probably a thing for a can. So if you get a small enough jar of pickles, totally doable.
I mean, I don't like pickles that much, so I probably am not going to be buying a koozie for my belt buckle, but...
What about when you need to throw pickle juice at somebody?
Yeah.
Just not on a trolley.
Right.
Toothbrushes and toothpaste may not be sold to the same customer at the same time on Sundays in Rhode Island.
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
Yeah, I have no idea the origin of that law. Like, in no way does that make sense ever.
You need toothpaste and a toothbrush? Well,
you're up to no good.
Separate transactions.
This is a Sunday, damn it. It's illegal in Rhode Island to bite off someone's limbs.
Oh, bite off someone's limbs?
Yeah.
I feel like That would be extremely hard.
You can
And
bite off
why?
someone's leg.
Ugh.
You cannot ride a horse on the highway to test its speed.
Oh my god, well, no kidding. That should be a given.
And lastly, any marriage where either of the parties is an idiot or a lunatic is null and void.
What?
He's an idiot. This wedding shouldn't be legal.
You're an idiot.
Pretty funny. So, those are some facts about Rhode Island, and now we're going to tell you a couple crime stories from Rhode Island. Alright, I'm starting us off this week, and I'm going to be telling you today about a con woman named Dana Lawrence.
Ooh, a con woman.
Yeah.
Yay. We haven't had a con story in a while.
Yeah, and this is a different kind of con story than I've told before, but it's interesting. And Dana actually travels all across the United States. She doesn't stay in one place very long, so I'm kind of cheating because she's only in Rhode Island for a little while, but she gets arrested in Rhode Island.
All right, I'll take it.
She actually went by at least 15 different aliases in at least 16 different states across the country over like a 20-year time span.
Dang, that's a lot of aliases.
Yeah. So Dana is a relatively pretty woman. That's not a nice thing to say. She probably is pretty. And there's a bunch of pictures of her, but all the ones I was seeing linked to news articles I was reading were like, her? Like, okay, I guess. Because most of her scams are against men. And
Okay.
But then I watched part of a documentary or like an episode of a show that featured her, and they were showing these pictures, and I was like, is that her really? Because the pictures they were showing were like absolutely gorgeous. So it's like, if those were her, then yeah, I get it. But all the other ones in news articles were not that flattering. Anyways, either way, she's able to fool a lot of men into starting relationships with her, and that was the main way she would con people. So Dana was born in the mid-70s. I couldn't find her actual birth date, but I think she was born in like 75, and she grew up in St. Augustine, Florida. When she was a teenager, she got pregnant and gave the baby up for adoption, and then she never ended up finishing high school, and she ended up getting married to a man in Provo, Utah.
What?
Yeah, weird. So I don't know how they met. I don't know anything, but she was really young and it didn't work out. So that relationship didn't last long. She moves out of Utah and moves to Chicago, Illinois. From Chicago, she's kind of figuring her life out there for a little while, and then she moves to New York City. And this is where they can trace her first con artist activities to New York City. I feel like she probably was starting to con people in Utah and Chicago. They just can't prove it.
Oh, probably.
But New York City is when they first start seeing her fishy behavior. So in New York City, she meets this guy named Chris. He's a college student, and she's like college age, but she never even graduated high school. But she figures out pretty quickly that he comes from a really wealthy family. So she starts dating Chris. They hit it off, but like literally they're only dating for like 2 weeks, and he realizes that she's pretty weird, and so he's like, this isn't working out. Sorry. Yeah. Bye. And she didn't take it well. So after Chris breaks up with her, and I don't even know if you can really call it a breakup, like they were hooking up for 2 weeks. That's it.
She was committed.
Yeah. And she knew his family was rich, so she was being like crazy.
Oh,
and he was like, oof, get out of here, lady.
He's like, oh, I made a mistake. Sorry about it.
Yeah.
See you later.
No, thank you. So he breaks up with her, and she starts stalking him and his family. So she's like showing up at their house, she's following them places, she's calling, she's being crazy. And after a few weeks, she calls him and tells him that she's pregnant and it's his child.
Oh, that's a lie.
Yeah, and he doesn't believe her. And he's like, okay, obviously she wants money, and she's still stalking my family. Like, to the point his family hired a lawyer and was pursuing legal action to get restraining orders against her.
Oh, yikes. That's really stalky.
Yeah, she was crazy. But in 1997, Dana actually did have a baby, and she named her baby girl Kennedy. but she didn't list a father on the birth certificate. She just left the father blank. So little Kennedy would grow up hearing about how, like, her father was super rich and she had this huge trust fund waiting for her when she grew up. But in reality, like, I don't even know if Chris knew there was an actual baby.
So is it actually his?
We'll get to that eventually. But he had no idea there was even a baby, so he couldn't even do, like, DNA testing, I don't think.
Yeah.
And if he did know there was a baby, he was like, that's not my kid. Like, no fucking way.
Right.
So I'm not sure how much longer she stayed in New York and stalked Chris and his family, but eventually she moves to Orlando, Florida. She starts, like, clubbing a lot, and in 2001, when she's 26 years old, she goes to this one bar, and she's paying her tab with this credit card from Lucasfilms. Like, yeah, George Lucas's company.
Okay.
And she says she works for Lucasfilms and that it's a company credit card because she's pretty high up and blah, 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 blah. And she's, like, just hanging out with, like, all the bartenders and staff at this bar and having a great time. And then at the end of the night, she gives them, like, a huge tip off this credit card. And they're like, wow, this lady's awesome. Let's invite her to come party with us after we close down.
Oh, that was her tactic.
I guess. But, I mean, she's getting free drinks and stuff with this credit card, however she got it. But, which I have no idea how she got this credit card. Like, not a clue. It worked, like, it paid, so it must have been real.
It paid, so all is well.
I don't know how she got it, but, she goes partying with the staff after the bar closes, and she has a one-night stand with one of the bartenders named Kevin. And then a few weeks later, she calls Kevin and is like, hey, I'm pregnant with your baby. And again, she actually was pregnant, and she gives birth to another baby girl in 2001 and names this baby Avery. So she had one kid when she was a teenager, gave that baby up for adoption. Then she had Kennedy in her early 20s with Chris, maybe, the rich guy. And now it's 2001, and she has another baby girl named Avery with this bartender. And again, she doesn't list a father on Avery's birth certificate, which is pretty weird.
Yeah, that is super weird because, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. So now she has these two small children in tow, and she's hanging out at this hotel bar in Orlando, Florida, because that's what you do when you have two small kids, totally. And
yeah, let's just go chill at the bar with my two little babes.
I mean, it's a hotel bar, but still, like, she has a tiny baby. So while she's hanging out at this hotel bar, she meets this pilot named Bill. He's from Indiana, and apparently they hit it off really, really well because she just, like, packs up and moves to Indiana with Bill.
Oh my gosh. And he obviously knows, like, all her baggage, her little two little tiny babies.
Yeah, she brings them with. So her and her two kids just pick up and move to Indiana from Florida. This lady's all over the fucking map. It's crazy.
Yikes. If I was the pilot, I'd be like, whoa, slow your roll, lady.
And, like, how fast is that? Like, literally, it's like, oh, hey, we just met, but you should move to Indiana with me.
I mean, at least I waited, like, a couple months before I moved to state for Aaron.
At least you actually knew, like, you really liked him. You had
meals with him. It was only 3 months, but I mean, hey, that's better than a day.
Yeah.
And a night at a hotel bar.
Yeah. So crazy. So she goes to Indiana, and she convinces Bill, the pilot, to give her $5,000 to start a cleaning business there. So he gives her the money, and she takes off with the kids to Massachusetts and is like, bye, Bill.
See you later. Thanks for the $5,000.
And, like, honestly, he's probably pretty lucky that he didn't get her pregnant.
Oh, yeah, he's probably like, good riddance. I guess I'll pay you $5,000 to get out of here.
Yeah. But then a few weeks later, she calls Bill and is like, hey, Bill, I'm pregnant.
Oh, God.
I forgot he was the father to one of her babies.
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, she actually did get knocked up.
She's very fertile.
She's a fertile myrtle. Like, holy shit.
I can't make a baby for the life of me.
It's so crazy. Like, what is she taking? And poor Bill, the pilot, is like a good dude, and he wants to be a dad, and he wants to be involved in his son's life, so he picks up his life in Indiana and moves to Massachusetts.
Oh no, and she's gonna be like, peace out, real quick,
Because
huh?
that's what she always does. So
Uh,
she gives birth to a son, and they name him Harper.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of a boy named Harper.
Me neither, but apparently I gave both of my kids unisex names. And then again, when she gives birth, she leaves the father's name blank on the birth certificate.
What the hell? I don't understand what the point of this is. Is there a point to this at some point in the story?
So I actually mention it right now. She seems to think that if she doesn't list a father on the birth certificate, no one's going to be able to take her kids away from her. And she's always on the move. So I think it was a control thing because she obviously didn't even like the kids that much.
Yeah.
Like putting them through moving like this and not having a stable life and not knowing their fathers or having any other stable people in their life besides her. Like, you don't care about those kids. I think it's a control thing. Like, she's like, these are my kids. No one's going to take them from me. And she used them to get sympathy from people and to like convince people that she was a good person.
God.
And so like her oldest daughter, she used to always make her lie and say she was actually her niece. And so she would use these kids to get like sympathy and to like make up background stories for herself. So it was all just a control thing for her. It was really weird.
That's sad.
I think without putting the father's name on the birth certificate, they couldn't be like, nope, taking my kid and you get to pay us child support or whatever.
That's so shitty that she like could just do that and get away with that.
Yeah.
Especially because like what if the guy, like you said, he wanted to be a part and like be responsible about it? Like that's messed up.
Yeah, and I mean he really could fight for it if he wanted to. Like he could get DNA testing. We're in 2003 at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
But she's always on the move, so you have to find her before you can try and even do any of that, you know?
Yeah.
So, anyways, she actually sticks around with Bill for a little while. In 2003, Harper is born. He's a young baby. They're living in Massachusetts, but they decide they're going to move to Rhode Island. So Dana and Bill and all three kids pick up and move to Rhode Island. Her oldest daughter, Kennedy, is 6-ish at this point. And so she enrolls her in a school because she's like school age. And at the school, Dana, the mom, makes a new friend named Lydia. Lydia's kids go to the same school as Kennedy, and the ladies meet at drop-off or whatever, and they start talking. Dana at this point is about 28 years old, and she tells Lydia that she was brought up in a really wealthy family, and she went to Harvard Law School, and she's super confident, and she sounds really smart, and Lydia didn't doubt her for a second. She was like, yeah, she seems like somebody that was brought up wealthy and went to law school at Harvard. So Lydia buys it hook, line, and sinker, even though Dana actually never even graduated high school. Dana also tells Lydia that 6-year-old Kennedy is her niece. She said that her sister died of cancer, so she had taken in Kennedy out of the goodness of her heart.
Oh.
So I think...
What an asshole.
Yeah, and I think she did that partially because she wanted to be like, I'm such a good person. I took in my niece. And partially because she's only 28 and supposedly went to law school. And she has a 6-year-old, and it'd be really hard to do those two things at the same time. So I think just age-wise, she thought it would make more sense and be more believable if Kennedy wasn't her daughter.
Okay, yeah, because law school with a child on your own, being a single mother, would probably be next to impossible.
And Harvard law, like...
Yeah, that would be hardcore.
So I'm just making an assumption there, but I think it probably has something to do with it. So Lydia believes all of her lies, and they become pretty good friends. And they actually stay in Rhode Island for a while. And the next year, in 2004, Dana tells Lydia that she's about to inherit a huge family trust fund. She even shows her these letters she has from an accounting firm in New York City that show the trust fund has $28 million in it.
$28 million?
$28 million in a trust fund that she's about to inherit.
That's a whole lot of money.
Yeah, like a ridiculously fake amount of money.
Yeah, $28 million. I wouldn't buy it.
Yeah. And Lydia's like, holy shit. But she has these papers on like a letterhead of some accounting firm with an address in New York City. Like they look super legit. And
Well, I can make a letterhead paper.
I know, right?
Like, I know how to Google search.
Lydia's trusting to a fault.
Yeah.
And she's like, wow, that's crazy. And Dana even like lets her keep one of the papers. She's like, oh, you hang on to that. Like, I don't know. And then a few months later, she comes to Lydia again and she's like, hey, this is so crazy, but can I borrow some money? I need to move to New York City to be near my family and start getting stuff settled until my trust fund comes in. And I just don't have any liquid cash until the trust fund stuff goes through. I'll obviously pay you back as soon as I get my trust fund.
Of course.
Don't even worry about it. And Lydia's like, well, I know she has like millions of dollars coming. I still have the fucking letterhead. And yeah, so she gives her money. I don't know how much money she gave her, but she also gave her a credit card and was like, hey, in case of an emergency, you can use this. If there's like anything that really comes up and you have an emergency, you can use this credit card if you need to, but just for emergencies.
Insane.
Yeah.
No freaking way.
Yeah, like so insane.
Yeah, nope. No. Why? I don't understand the thought process of someone just being that generous. Like, oh, here's a credit card, and you being tied to that credit card and responsible. Like, that person could ruin your life, even if you think you trust them. Like, they could just go on a binge, and then you're fucked.
And it's not a family member. It's just some friend. Like,
yeah, nope. Sorry. I'm not gonna give my friends, any of them, just a credit card and say, just in case of an emergency.
If you need that. But
like, no, if you have an emergency, call me and we'll figure it out.
And maybe Lydia's just really fucking dumb and is like, she's totally gonna give me like $500,000, so worth it.
An idiot.
Like maybe she thinks she's gonna get a shit ton of money from her super generous millionaire friend. I don't know. So
naive.
So Dana takes off again with the kids. I think she leaves Bill in Rhode Island, and she goes to New York City. And over a very short amount of time, apparently she had a bunch of emergencies and had to use that credit card from Lydia. A lot.
Of course she did. She has a credit card that's not her responsibility.
Yeah.
And she just loves spending people's money that isn't hers.
She ended up spending like $12,000 on this credit card.
My gosh. I mean, if I gave someone a credit card and was like, hey, here's for an emergency, I'd put like a $500 limit on it.
Right?
like, fuck you. $500 max if you're going to try to be a dick.
$12,000.
No, that's insane.
And Lydia was keeping an eye on the card and was seeing that these transactions were happening, but she's like,
I would freaking pull the plug, man.
Yeah, but she keeps thinking, well, obviously she's just using that card because she knows she's going to be getting so much money so soon and is going to be able to pay it back right away. And
I'm not that trusting.
You shouldn't be. It's not okay.
No way. I would never even if I knew in my right mind, like legitimately that someone had this amount of money, no, I would not let you rack up my credit card because that's my responsibility.
Exactly.
Like golly, lady.
How do you not have any money if you were about to inherit $28 million? Those two things don't go together. You wouldn't just be broke completely.
Not even a little bit. You wouldn't be broke. You would have distributions or some shit.
Exactly. Or family.
Yeah. No, you're not just penniless and just scraping by your bootstraps until you get your trust fund.
Exactly. But then Lydia talks to this other woman in Rhode Island who had been friends with Dana as well. And this lady's like, Dana scammed a bunch of money out of me. Don't trust her.
Oh, yeah, don't trust her, of course.
And Lydia was like, no, I saw the letter from the accounting firm. She gave me the letter. I have the letter. So Lydia finds this letter and she goes to New York City to find the address of this accounting firm and to look into this. She goes to that address. There's no accounting firm. And that's the moment Lydia realized that everything was a lie.
What do you know? There's no accounting firm? Lady, when you had that letter, you should have Googled the address and looked it up immediately. Like,
it's 2004.
$28 million. Google that shit.
Bing it. Yahoo it.
Yeah. Yahoo. AOL. Whatever. We were beyond AOL at that point, I think.
Yeah, 2004 was MySpace days.
Well, I think I still had AOL at that point, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was probably still.
I still had dial-up, maybe.
I feel like Bing might have been bigger than Google at that point, though. Ask Jeeves.
Oh, yeah. Ask Jeeves. I remember that.
So, at this point, Dana had spent $12,000 on the emergency credit card. I don't know how much money Lydia had given her on top of that, but that was all gone, obviously. And so Lydia and this other woman go to the police and actually file a police report against Dana. They're like, she stole a bunch of money from us.
She's a scammer.
Yeah.
But I bet they're going to be like, well, you gave her the credit card, so she really didn't steal money from you.
Actually, no. They're like, oh, that's not good. And the police take it seriously. So, yeah. But this is the first time anyone has gone to the police about Dana. And so we're not getting a ton of details of how much money she's taking from these men for, like, I don't know, medical bills and babies and shit. But I'm sure she's been stealing money from all sorts of people along this entire way. But this is the first time anybody actually went to the police. So it's the first thing they're able to, like, actively document in her trail of cons.
Like the first paper trail.
Yeah. So they press charges. She's no longer in Rhode Island, but there is like open charges out against her in Rhode Island. So now she's in New York City again, and she meets this guy named Ben. It's unclear to me how they met, but I think they probably met online first or knew each other from the last time she was in New York City. But she shows up on Ben's doorstep and is like, hey, me and my 3 small children are running from an abusive boyfriend. I have nowhere to go. I knew you were in New York City. And, like, could you help me out for a while? And Ben happened to be in the military and he was about to deploy. And so he was like, well, my apartment's going to be empty here soon anyways. You can stay here. And, like, I'm pretty sure they were having a sexual relationship for a couple weeks until he left as well.
Here's your payment.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, so he ships off and she is staying in his apartment and she starts using his credit cards.
Whoa, what do you know? Oh my goodness. I'm so surprised.
Thankfully, his family was watching his accounts and they noticed pretty quickly and filed a police report against her as well.
Good.
Yeah. So the police come and question her and she takes off with the kids again. I don't know if they
just like, whoops, I'm out.
Yeah, I don't know if they like didn't arrest her and then she took off as soon as left or what, but she takes off again. So now she's running from fraud charges in both Rhode Island and New York, and she heads to Canada with the 3 kids.
Oh man, she really is all over.
And when she fled to Canada, she was pregnant again.
What from the military guy?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness, lady, stop procreating.
How is she having so many children? This is her 5th kid.
She's definitely like real fertile.
Yeah, it's insane. So she gives birth to another little boy named Jackson, and I don't know who his dad was. And after she gives birth in Canada, she tries to come back to the US, but she's stopped at the border. They see that she has felony warrants for her in New York, and they arrest her.
Uh-oh.
Yep. So when she's arrested, she puts the new baby up for adoption, and he gets adopted out. I think that's why we don't know who his dad is, because he just got adopted as a really small baby and never is heard of again, I guess. So now she's put 2 kids up for adoption and has the 3 other ones with 3 different men. 5 kids, 5 different dads.
Ew. Ugh. Yuck, man.
Yeah. So when she's arrested, her oldest daughter is sent to live with her sister her oldest daughter, Kennedy, is sent to live with her sister in Florida. And then Harper, the son of Bill, the pilot, he goes to Rhode Island to live with Bill because Bill's still in Rhode Island. And Bill takes in Avery, the middle daughter, as well, even though she's not biologically his child.
Wow, what a stand-up guy.
Kinda.
Kinda. Oh.
We're going to circle back to that in just a second.
All right, Bill. We'll table that, Bill.
He just didn't take her in permanent, is all.
Okay.
But he is a stand-up guy. He's not a bad person in any way. So Dana pleads guilty in both New York and Rhode Island to fraud charges. She's sentenced to 2 years in jail and 9 years probation. I think she got like 1 year in jail in each place, basically. And then 9 years probation and ordered to pay $47,000. So
Bet she's going to get that $47,000 from her big trust fund.
Yeah, totally.
Her $28 million trust fund.
So easy to pay back.
She's like, oh, that's chump change, guys.
Yeah, right. I wish. Then she wouldn't scam all these people like a lunatic. I think she ends up serving like a year. Meanwhile, in 2005, Bill asks Avery, like she's arrested in 2005. So just a little while later, Bill asks Avery, who I think is only like 4 at this point in time. And he's like, hey, do you want to meet your real dad? And she's like, you're not my real dad?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so she didn't even...
That's a little young.
Yeah. So that's why I was like a little weird about like him being such a good guy, because he took her in, but he was looking for her dad, which...
I mean...
That's good. Her dad deserves to be part of her life if he wants to, like it's not his fault she got taken away from him.
Yeah.
So her dad is Kevin, the bartender from Colorado. And Bill had tracked him down somewhere. I don't know if Dana had mentioned him. She probably said that he was abusive and she was running from him, really, because that's her like go-to excuse. And he finds Kevin. He tells Kevin about Avery, and Kevin was like, yeah, I want to know my child. And so she's shipped off to meet her dad, Kevin, and his family. And apparently he's now living in Philadelphia because that's where his family's from. So she's now in Philly with this guy she doesn't know. And
oh, cute.
All of the kids are just separated at this point.
That's kind of terrible.
Yeah, like it's really sad. And they're like the true victims of Dana's actions. Like these poor kids that she's just
innocent.
Yeah, and they're not having any stability. They're having to change their names and like tell people their names are different things. Their last names are different things. They're their mom's niece, not her daughter. Like,
and they're so young, they can't even comprehend all this. They're probably just like, I don't know, like this is what happened, and this is this.
And they're like, this is weird, but it's how we live our lives. We're just take off in the middle of the night and pack up all our belongings and leave sometimes.
Yikes.
Yeah, so it's really sad. So when Dana's released from prison, she did try to get her kids back, but the dads were like, yeah, no way in hell that is ever happening.
Good.
Except Kennedy, the oldest. Her dad was the rich guy, Chris, in New York, the student, who
so it really was his kid?
Yes. And it will eventually find out, but yeah, he actually is the father. So wow. He doesn't believe she exists, and so Kennedy was sent to stay with Dana's sister while she was in jail, and so then when Dana gets out, Kennedy goes back to living with her mom. So she's supposed to stay in Rhode Island for her mandatory probation, and obviously Dana skips out on her mandatory probation. She was supposed to be on probation for 9 years. So at least they kind of took what she was doing seriously enough that they wanted to keep an eye on her for the next 9 years. But she bails, she leaves town, and now she's a fugitive of the law. And like nationally. It's just for like Rhode Island that she's a fugitive, but like U.S. Marshals are the ones that will be apprehending her. Yeah. So
it's a big deal.
Yeah. She's on the run, and she starts going by Dana McAllister instead of Dana Lawrence. So this is the first time she changes her name. She goes to Chicago, and she meets a stockbroker named Mike on a dating website.
Oh, does she have another baby?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, God.
Yeah, not yet. I had to think. I was like, does she have more babies? She convinces Mike and his family that she runs a nonprofit, and it's called, oh, I didn't put it in my notes, but it's like Bling Thing or something. And it's where celebrities donate their jewelry and it gets sold at auction and all the proceeds go to charity.
How does she make up these things?
I don't know. Like, she's kind of smart, but...
Well, I guess she's a freaking mastermind, but goodness.
Yeah, and they fell for it. So Mike is a stockbroker. He and his parents end up donating like $70,000 to this fake charity.
No, they don't.
Yeah. So she's bilking them for lots, and one day U.S. Marshals show up at her apartment door. She wasn't home when they came, so then when she got home, her neighbors were like, hey, there were like U.S. Marshals here. And she was like,
oh, God.
Oh, shit, we gotta go. So middle of the night, yeah, she packs up her and Kennedy, and she heads to
Canada?
Miami. Canada screwed her over last time, so...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so she can't cross the border. But she heads back to Florida, and she starts going by the name Miranda Matthews. And when she gets to Florida, she gets a job at a nonprofit. She tells them she went to Harvard, that she really is into nonprofit work. She just wants to help. Like, that's her whole goal in life, blah, 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 blah. And they hire her, and she steals $28,000 from company credit cards.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, so she gets fired. I don't know why they didn't press charges, but...
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
As far as I can tell, they didn't. So she gets fired, and she heads to Boston. She meets a new guy in Boston and immediately moves in with him.
Of course she does.
So not only is poor little Kennedy, like, have the most unstable life, she's also being put in, like, really scary situations. Like,
yeah, super sketch.
Dana doesn't know these men well enough to know they're not pedophiles, you know? And she has a young girl just going everywhere with her while she does her shenanigans.
Yeah, nope.
So one day her and this new guy get in a fight, and the cops are called. And when they come to, like, break up the fight or whatever, she tells them her name's Miranda Bent. But then after they leave, she decides that she needs to get out of there before they actually try and, like, look into Miranda Bent and realize she was lying. So she goes back to Miami again and calls the school that Kennedy used to be enrolled in and is like, hey, this is Kennedy's mom. Like, we're coming back. I was hoping to re-enroll her, but I'm running from an abusive ex. He can't know where we are. We're having a really hard time. I don't have a job. And the school's like, oh, you know what? We have a job opening that you're totally qualified for.
So, go milk someone else.
Yeah, so she gets hired on at this, I think it's a private school, and her job is handling the financials.
Oh, wonderful. Perfect.
Yeah.
Do they do background checks?
No one background checks this lady. So she starts stealing money, and she actually even took out a credit card in the name of one of her coworkers.
What the fudge?
Not even the school. One of her coworkers, she got enough information to open a credit card in their name.
But heck no. If anybody ever opens a credit card with my name, that's a coworker, like someone in HR.
Someone you know? Like, no way. Yeah, so this lady realizes what happened and that it was Dana, and she goes straight to the cops.
Golly, that's so scary because that could legitimately happen to anybody. Like, your information's there if you work for a company. You really don't know how they're housing your data.
How secure it's kept. Yeah, that's scary.
So literally anybody can, I mean, if they're in a position that gets access to all this information, they can really take advantage of it.
I don't think she was in, like, HR, but somehow she got this lady's information and opened a credit card.
Huh.
But the lady realized it was her that did it, and she went straight to the cops. So Dana realizes she called the cops, and so they go on the run again. But when Dana tells Kennedy that they have to leave again, Kennedy's like, I don't want to.
Good. Because how old is she at this point?
She's 13, and she's sick of living life this way. And Dana's like, okay, you don't have to come. You can stay. Bye.
What?
And she leaves.
She leaves her 13-year-old daughter with these random peeps?
No, now they have their own apartment in Miami, actually.
Oh, yeah, because they moved.
Yeah,
Okay.
she got in a fight with that random guy and moved to Miami and got them an apartment. So she's like, okay, like, here's a little money. You can keep living in this apartment. I'm leaving.
Okay, bye.
So,
a 13-year-old living alone in an apartment with here's a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kennedy is staying in this apartment all by herself. She would take the city bus to school every day.
Oh my God.
But eventually she ran out of money. And she was like, I don't even know what to do. So she calls the cops and is like, hey, like, my mom left. I'm all alone and don't have any money. And so they put her in foster care for a little while. And then eventually she was sent to live with her aunt again. The same aunt.
Oh my gosh, that's so terrible.
Yeah. And like, why couldn't Dana have just been like, hey, sister, you've been taking care of her while I was in jail. Keep her. I'm not a good mom. Or something.
Seriously. She should not have children.
Yeah. So Kennedy's in like a semi-stable home again, at least. And Dana is now in Georgia. She's going by the name Olivia Lauder and tells people she's the heir to the Estee Lauder fortune.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So
please, lady. What's next? Jeez Louise.
Right. She gets a job for a company that does home restoration, and she spends $30,000 on a company credit card.
What the crap?
Her boss confronts her, and she tries to tell him that she has that Estee Lauder family money coming in soon, and she's going to pay him back. And he's like, I wasn't born yesterday. I'm calling the police.
God, thank God.
But she outruns the police again, and so she moves to North Carolina. She starts going by the name Jenna or Genevieve and dating a waiter named Matt. But their relationship's pretty rocky, and so she leaves Matt and moves to Denver, Colorado. But a few months...
But I mean, I guess she does have to jump into relationships real quick because she needs a place to stay.
Seriously, though.
Because she doesn't have anything. So she's like, hey, you look like a catch. Can I come
I'll come home with you tonight.
Wink, wink.
You got a bed? I'm in.
Oh, my God.
And she's all over the country. Like, these are not short moves.
Yeah, no, that's...
She went from North Carolina to Denver, Colorado this time.
So is she flying? Does she have a car? Does she drive all these places?
I have no idea.
That's kind of irrelevant, but...
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
But a few months later, she calls Matt and is like, hey, I'm pregnant.
Oh, God.
It's your
And
baby.
she fucking probably is. How do the people that are the worst, that should not have kids, how can they just keep fucking popping them out?
It's terrible.
I don't understand. Like, that's the worst thing, and I feel like an asshole saying that.
No.
But I swear to God, it's the people that shouldn't have kids that are the most fertile and that have the easiest time getting pregnant and can just pop them right out. And then people that
would actually be great parents and want
kids can't have fucking kids.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, so she's like, hey, I'm having your baby. And Matt's like, oh, I'm having a kid. Like, I want to be in its life. I guess I'm moving to Denver, Colorado. So, again, he picks up his life and moves across the country for this lady. She gives birth to a daughter named Arden in 2013. Matt and her date on and off for the next 2 years. And then one day, Jenna, as he knows her, and Arden just disappear.
So this is kid number 6, right?
One she gave up for adoption when she was in high school. Then the 3 with different dads. Then the 5th one that got adopted when she tried to come back from Canada. And then, yes, kid number 6.
Okay.
So one day she just disappears. And Matt searched for his daughter for the next 2 years and couldn't find her.
Oh.
Dana goes to Baltimore at this point, and she is still going by Jenna. She started going by different last names, but at this point she's going by Jenna, and she's calling the baby Isabella. And she meets an attorney named Nick, and she meets like guys with good jobs, stockbrokers, attorneys. Like it's crazy.
So I really want to know, like, I need to look up what she looks like. And B, like, does she have like the best personality ever? Because how is she reeling in all of these people?
I don't know. She must have some sort of charm about her.
Because she's got to have something. Because if she doesn't have the looks, she's got to have like an awesome personality or like something. There's a helicopter flying over my house.
I couldn't tell if it was on my end or yours. That's well, and she's a good faker. Like people, all sorts of people. She was telling everyone she went to Harvard Law School, and nobody was even doing a background check. They were just like, seems legit. She seems smart. So
Right. That's so dumb because I mean, I've had to do like education verification. Like that's a thing.
Yeah.
So you can't get away with lying about your education, at least nowadays. I mean, at certain places, anyways.
I think she just really played up like I'm in a desperate situation. I need a job now. And then just seemed really sweet and like charming and smart. And so they were just like, we'll bypass those steps. You obviously, like, you're running from an abusive relationship. You lost everything. We want to help you out. So I think she was just really, really good at tricking people.
I think I need to change my tactics.
Most people would feel really bad about being like this, though.
Yeah, I could never do it, but gosh.
Right? Like, So she meets an attorney named Nick in Baltimore, and she moves with him to Philadelphia. He gets her own apartment, and then he gets himself one nearby.
What?
But even though she had this apartment that he was paying for, she started staying in a domestic violence shelter in Maryland to start her next scam.
Oh my God, what the hell is wrong with this lady? And what the hell is wrong with that guy? Why would he get her a separate apartment?
I don't know, maybe he was married.
Who cares? Like if I was married to someone and they were paying for a separate apartment for someone, I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Well,
like
obviously, his wife wouldn't know he was paying for the apartment for another woman.
Well, she must not pay attention to finances whatsoever.
Maybe, I don't know if he was even married, but he put her up in an apartment and she didn't even live in it.
I would definitely know if my husband was just like throwing out $1,200 a month for rent for someone else. That's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, I don't know. He's an attorney. Maybe he's a really good one.
Ugh.
But anyway, she's staying in a domestic violence shelter in Maryland instead of this apartment. And she's now Jewish.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's new.
So she talks to this rabbi and she tells him, hey, I'm pregnant. I'm going to get an abortion.
Again?
Well,
is this fake or is this a real pregnancy?
Undetermined.
Oh my Lord.
So she says she's pregnant and that she's running from an abusive ex and she doesn't want to have the baby and she's going to get an abortion unless this rabbi can help her find a family that will financially support her while she's pregnant and then adopt the baby. And the rabbi's like, yeah, I know this other rabbi. He's already adopted 3 kids. They want to keep growing their family and they would love another. So he gets her in contact with this other rabbi.
Oh gosh, these poor people.
Family. And so they, for months, were giving her money. They paid for her rent. They paid for her food, her medical bills, quote unquote. And they end up giving her between $8,000 and $10,000. But like a month before she's supposed to have the baby, she told them she was in a terrible car accident and lost the baby.
Oh, so she was totally freaking scamming the whole time. She was never pregnant.
I think so. So her kids were interviewed in this article and on like these different shows. And they're like, that was probably one of the worst things she ever did. And this poor rabbi and his wife were like really excited to welcome a baby into their family, you know? So it just devastated them. And then they found out she's a con woman and there probably never was a baby. And she knew what she was going to put them through the whole time.
That's awful because imagine being on their end of things. Like, obviously, they're adopting. Maybe they can't have kids of their own, probably, and they're very excited. And that's a dick move.
Yeah,
like that's awful.
For months and months, just
and
like
how could you live with yourself scamming people like this? And
yeah,
good Lord,
she's terrible.
I hate this lady.
Yeah, so I don't know if there ever was actually a car accident or if it
There
was
was
all a
not.
lie.
She's a fucking liar.
I think so too. So
very opinionated about this lady.
Well, I think you're right. I don't think there was a car accident. But
Yeah, no.
now she heads to New Hampshire and she stays at another abused women's shelter. And this abused women's shelter, she's still going by Jenna, but different last names. And this abused women's shelter helps like the women, they work with this food bank, and the women can go volunteer there, and they can also get like food from the food bank. So she's volunteering at this food pantry, and she meets one of the employees of the mayor. And she starts talking to this person, and she's like, yeah, I'm currently staying here. I'm an abused woman. I'm hiding from my ex. He was really scary, but I went to Harvard. I'm an attorney. I really want to help the city out. I've written grants in the past, and if you guys ever need a grant writer, I'm happy to help out. So somebody who like writes grant proposals to see if they can get like grant money for the city. And the mayor's office was like, oh, we actually do need a grant writer right now. And they talked to the local food pantry where she'd been volunteering, and the food pantry was like, no, she's such a great person. Like, she's so reliable and smart. She's fantastic. Definitely hire her. And so they do, and they don't run a background check. They just hire her.
Ay.
And she gets an apartment with Nick, the lawyer from Maryland. So apparently he moved again. I don't know. So she gets 2 grants for the city, but after she gets like the approval of the grants, so she is good at what she does. She wrote these grant proposals and got the grants for the city. But once,
because she's a fucking scam artist.
Yeah, but like she's pretty smart for not having graduated high school.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
so she gets the grant money, but then she goes to somebody in the mayor's office and she's like, hey, I want the account number for that money. And the person she's talking to is like, we don't give that out. And she's like, well, that's ridiculous. I helped get this money. I want to help make sure it's going to the right projects or blah, 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 blah. She loses her shit. Gosh. And she gets really weird. And so this lady at the mayor's office is like, it's kind of freaking me out.
Yeah, something's off here.
Yeah. And then Dana said something like, you're going to pay for this or something. And the lady's like, that's a threat. Yeah, that lady's like, I feel threatened and I don't know what to do about it. But this lady happens to have a friend in the FBI.
Wow, good.
Yeah, so she calls up her buddy Mark Hastbacka, FBI. Hastbacka. He's an FBI agent. And she's like, I'm probably overreacting, but there's something fishy as hell about this lady.
But you're not overreacting and you don't even know it.
Yeah. And like, thankfully, this one person had a friend in the FBI and got a weird enough vibe from her.
Yeah.
So Mark, the FBI agent, starts investigating Jenna. He goes to her apartment and she's not home, and he meets Nick, the boyfriend. And Nick's like, oh, she actually left on Sunday. I don't know where she went, but she's been gone since Sunday. And it's now Thursday. And Mark, the FBI agent's kind of looking around, and he sees there's like kids' toys all over the place and stuff. And he's like, okay, if she's been gone all week, like you would have cleaned up these fucking Legos. But sure, buddy.
Oh, so he's lying for her?
Yeah. And so,
oh, come on.
Mark's like, well, can I search your apartment? And Nick's like, yeah, that's fine. And they get to the bedroom, and there's a bunch of electronics, like cell phones, laptops. There's a bunch of paperwork and different IDs. And
oh, gosh.
They're like, hey, can we take all this stuff?
The mother load right there.
Yeah. And so they ask Nick. They're like, hey, can we take this? And Nick's like, yeah, sure, I guess.
Cool, it's not mine, I don't care.
Yeah, I think he was like, this is the FBI, like, what am I doing? And
you can have whatever you want.
After they left, Nick calls them like 15 minutes later, and he's like, hey, I was lying. She was here. She was hiding in the basement.
Well, good. Thank God he's like not an idiot, but he's still kind of an idiot.
Yeah, but she didn't run this time. So Nick's like, hey, I told them you're still here. You should probably go to the police station and talk to them. So she does. Dana goes.
Well, at least she's not violent and didn't kill him for like outing her.
Seriously, at least there's not that in this story.
Yeah, because I got plenty of that.
Ugh. So she goes to talk to the cops to see if, I think what she was doing is trying to convince them to give her back all that stuff. Like, I think she thought she could go in there and just be confident and be like, yep, my name's Jenna. Those are my paperwork. You don't need them. I want them back. And they would
She's
just like
that dumb?
hand them back. But it doesn't work.
There's where it comes into play that she doesn't have a high school graduation.
Yeah. Like,
because no, that's not how it works.
It's so crazy. But she's like, they don't know who I really am. But they're looking at this paperwork and there's stuff with other names on it. And then there's like the birth certificate for Isabella, the toddler, that has the name Arden on it instead of Isabella. And they're like, who's this kid? Like, who's this woman? We're not giving her stuff back. So they're questioning her. And eventually, like, she's just like trying to play dumb and like give them the runaround in her answers. And they're like, what's your real name? And she tells them. They run her record. They see she's a fugitive from the law in Rhode Island. So they're able to arrest her on the spot because of that. And they had to drive her to be transferred to the U.S. Marshals in New Hampshire. And while they're in the car, she's like taunting the FBI agent. And she's like, you only know 20% of what I've done. You'll never figure it out.
Okay, well, you're an idiot because why are you even saying that?
Right?
Like, just shut your mouth and sit back there and be quiet.
Mark, the FBI agent, is like, challenge accepted.
Like, all right, bitch. You want to go? Let's go.
I work for the FBI. I don't know if you realize that.
It's like, I don't know if you know, but FBI is kind of a big deal. And we kind of get shit done. And we kind of know how to get things and information.
Yeah, and he like took this case personally. Like, he started digging in and he was just like, I want to know everything. So he starts reaching out to people that have known her. He locates like all of her kids that he can. And
all of the fucking 8 of them.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well,
There's
6.
Like 7.
That
6.
we know of. I don't know.
But good God.
So the first thing he wants to do is find the father of the Isabella / Arden. And she's now 4 years old. So her dad's been looking for her for more than 2 years. And FBI agent Mark is able to like find people that knew Dana at the time that she was pregnant. And then he finds out she was with someone else named Mark, and he was from North Carolina or wherever. And he was a waiter. And so he's able to track down this guy and convince him to. Amazing. Yeah. And so he convinces him to fly to New Hampshire and take a DNA test, and he's able to get full custody of his baby. So the FBI also reached out to the older daughters, Kennedy and Avery, and they haven't seen each other for 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, since Dana got arrested trying to cross back into the U.S. from Canada.
Holy cow.
Avery went to live with her dad, and Kennedy stayed with her mom. And so it's been 10 years since they've even seen each other. So they meet each other again, and they are like now involved in each other's lives, and eventually become roommates, and they're like actually feeling like sisters again and stuff. And Mark, the FBI agent, is like the one making this all happen. Like, he's reaching out to these people. He's trying to get information from the kids too about like all the places they've lived and jobs their mom has had and all this stuff. But he's also able to connect Kennedy to her father, the rich Chris. So Kennedy had actually tried reaching out to Chris a few times over the years, and he never responded to her. He just thought it was Dana being crazy, trying to get money from him.
I don't blame him.
I don't either. But then one day, FBI agent Mark calls and is like, hey, she's your kid. Like, hate to tell you, but she is your kid.
I hate to tell you. I hate to break the news, boy.
She doesn't want anything from you. She's a good kid. She's like 18 or 19 at this point.
She's like, I'm a grown-up. I just want a relationship with my dad. Like,
yeah, I want you to know I exist, basically. Yeah. And it felt really good for her just to have Mark, the FBI agent, like stand up for her like that. They became like really close through the whole thing.
Oh, I'm sure, because she had no one else.
Yeah.
She's been like, she's the oldest, and she's had probably the roughest time because she's been around for the most and seen it all.
Yeah, Avery was only 4 when she went to live with her dad.
Yeah.
Kennedy was with her mom for 13 years.
Yeah.
And then her mom would pop back in now and then because she still was at her aunt's house, you know?
Yikes. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, so he convinces Chris to, like, talk to Kennedy, and they're working on building a relationship. Dana is facing charges using a false social security number. She's going to plead guilty.
Just one?
Yep.
Well, just one?
Yep. And usually the max sentence for that kind of thing is only 6 months.
Ugh.
But at her trial, like, the prosecution really wanted to highlight, like, this wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't just like one apartment.
Years of shit.
It wasn't just like one apartment application where she wrote a fake social security number. She's been fucking abusing everyone.
Yeah.
So she's sentenced to 18 months in prison.
18 months?
She served 1 year in jail, almost exactly, and was released in August of 2018.
So she's probably done a bunch of jack shit since then.
We don't really know. She owed $28,000 in restitution and was on parole until sometime in 2021. So I don't know if that's already passed yet or not, but she'll be completely off parole soon if she's not already. In late 2020, FBI agent Mark got a call from some guy who had recently broken up with Dana.
And she was trying to scam him?
Well, he said she was acting weird, and so he broke up with her. They'd only been dating for 2 months. She started acting weird. He broke up with her.
I'm pregnant.
And she said she was pregnant.
I fucking called it. And I bet this bitch is pregnant, isn't she?
She's 45. I don't know.
She's probably still fucking pregnant.
I don't know how that would be possible, but this guy called, like, he did his research or whatever, and he found Mark Hastabaka and was like, hey, I know you've been looking into her, like, just so you know, she's being crazy and telling me she's pregnant again. And so she's still, like, up to her old ways.
Of course she is.
Hope to God she's not pregnant.
You don't fucking grow out of that, but hopefully she's not pregnant. But she's fucking fertile myrtle, so she probably is pregnant.
That'd be so crazy. She did try filing a $5 million defamation lawsuit against the city where she got arrested or whatever.
Shut your fucking face, lady.
It got dismissed very quickly. And her release, like a stipulation of her release from prison, was that she can't work anywhere where she has access to people's personal information.
Okay, you can work in fucking fast food, lady. You can be a server, and that's about it.
So she was released in 2018. After she was released, she started a website for herself and, like, to get work. I don't know. And she was calling herself a grant writer, an advocate, and a development strategist. And I don't know what came from any of that. The website is now gone. All of her social media is now either gone or private. And she literally could be anywhere scamming anyone.
Yikes.
At this moment.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. She's a fucking trip.
I just can't I don't understand how she got away with it for so long, and I don't understand how she can just, like, keep getting pregnant.
I don't understand how, in the end, the only thing she got charges pressed for was using a fake social security number. Like, she stole,
that's insane.
They know she stole money from, like, 3 different jobs.
That should definitely be a charge.
Yeah, she stole...
Or 3.
She put a credit card number... She made a credit card in someone else's name. Like, there should be way more charges.
There should be way more charges because just that one teensy charge is ridiculous with her lifetime of crime.
Yeah, like, and her poor kids.
Her poor kids. That's awful.
All the kids that they could track down have done really well in life.
Well, thank God, and I hope they don't take after their mother and they just take it as a lesson. Or do they? I wonder if they even know.
They do. Well, the
younger ones know?
I don't know about Avery/Isabella. And obviously the 2 that got adopted out, I'm sure they don't even know.
Probably, and that's probably for the best.
So I don't know about the youngest. if she knows anything, because she's probably still only like 7 right now.
Wow, that's
7 or 8.
crazy.
And the oldest one is like in her early 20s, and the second one is like 18, and they're like roommates now and developing a relationship. And they both were actually interviewed for the article I read and for some like weird TV show. It's called FBI Declassified. This is the name of the show on CBS. But they're both really pretty. They're cute girls. Like, so their mom probably is really pretty. It's just there's some not flattering pictures of her that they chose to use in the articles, I think, just to be like, fuck you, Dana.
Probably.
But they seem to all be doing well, at least.
Well, at least there's that, because geez Louise, that lady's freaking nuts.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that she's just out and about.
And she's
doing
only
her thing.
45. Like, she might be pregnant right now.
She probably is, like I said. How the fudge does this lady just keep popping out babies? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully she's not pregnant.
Ugh.
My story was kind of long this week, so...
Well, that's fine, because now I'm all like riled up at yours that I'm like, I don't have a specific speech for mine, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, it doesn't need to be long, so just give us the Cliff Note versions.
I will be perfect at Cliff Note version. Yes. Cliff Notes of my terrible case. Okay. And while I was making my notes, I feel like one of my most recent cases was like the same date.
Oh,
but
really?
Yeah, July 27th, 1987. Does that sound familiar to you?
I'm trying to think. I'm so bad at remembering what our last episodes were.
I can't remember for sure, but I feel like it's like around the same time as another one that I just did.
Connecticut was the Cheshire murders. Was that in the 80s?
I think so.
Then it might have been that one.
All right. Well, I don't know. So, anyways, we are in 1987, so we're right around the time where your cases were in the vicinity as well.
No, she didn't start until the 90s.
Okay, so we're right. We're a little bit before.
Yeah, we're like around the time she had her first baby, probably.
God. Okay, so July 27th, 1987. I just want to put it out there. I had a few different references and sources for this week, and I'm primarily kind of obviously going off of those. There was a Wikipedia article, there was another article, and then also the Murderpedia article that I looked at. So I want to put that out there. Okay, so July 27th, 1987. We're going to talk about Becky Spencer. So Becky Spencer, she lives in the Buttonwoods, I guess, neighborhood of Warwick, Rhode Island.
It's a cute name.
Yeah, the Buttonwoods. I guess it's like a nicer neighborhood in that area. And I'll get to that, or I'll touch on that a little bit more later.
I feel like the section of the country we're in right now is a lot of nice areas.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of nice areas in the East Coast.
Like Connecticut, Rhode Island. I think of these as wealthy states. In my head, it's like, oh, these are rich places.
No, they're definitely wealthy states, but it's crazy because they're all like so old. So like all of the real estate, all of everything is just so old, but it's still so expensive because it's just such a wealthy part of the country.
It's like, how are you paying that much money for a house that was built in the 1800s? Like,
yeah,
come
no
on.
Kidding. I bought my house in the 1970s and I'm like, oh, this is too expensive and oh, this house sucks. Like, so anyways, July 27th, 1987. Becky Spencer, she lives in the Buttonwoods neighborhood of Warwick, Rhode Island. She lives in a house with her brother and their children. And July 27th.
Their children?
Well, not their children together, but they each have children of their own.
Oh, okay.
And they live together.
All right,
yes.
That's good.
Yeah, let's clear that up. It's not incest like my other cases.
God, I almost did another incest one last week in Connecticut, and it was fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I did so much research, and I was like, I don't want to tell this story.
You're like, I just don't want to talk about this.
Like,
it's good.
I'll give you the ultimate Cliff Notes. A couple has a baby real young, put it up for adoption. When she's like 18, she finds them. They're still together. She ends up falling in love with her biological dad, and he
God.
leaves her biological mom. They get married because they used a fake social security number in another state.
And the mom and the dad are already related, yeah?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it's his biological daughter that he ends up marrying.
Oh,
she
gross.
Gets pregnant and has a baby, and then they both get arrested for adultery, and then she decides she doesn't want to be with him because she's 20 and he's her biological father, and they just had a kid together, and he kills her and her baby and then himself.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, okay. That's terrible.
Yep, as much of that story as we need to hear.
Yeah, that's all we need. Mine's not that bad, I guess.
Sorry.
But it's still pretty bad.
So their kids are not incest babies. That's good.
They are not incest babies. They're separate.
Yeah.
So they just live together. On July 27, 1987, there is Becky Spencer. So she lives on 60 Inez Avenue in Warwick, Rhode Island. And the Price family, later, I kind of ruined it by saying it right now, but my notes are all over the place. So the Price family, they live on 76 Inez Avenue. So that's right down the street.
Yeah.
That's gonna come into play later. So Becky Spencer, she and her brother and all of them, they are doing their thing for the night, and Becky's brother works the graveyard shift, so he's gone overnight and she's home. And
so that's probably why they live together, just to help each other out watching the kids.
Yeah, definitely kind of take turns and help each other out for sure. So on the night of July 27th, the kids are all elsewhere. They're not at home that night. I don't recall where they are off the top of my head, and I didn't note it because, like I said, my notes are crap this week.
Well, if they're both divorced, there's a good chance half the kids are at their other parents' house.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. Now that you said other parents' house, Becky was really close with her husband. They were divorced, but they were co-parenting. And so they were still really close. And so I think all of the kids were actually with him. So the kids are with Becky's ex-spouse, and Becky and her brother and one of Becky's friends are like doing dinner and whatever, and they're doing their thing. And then I don't recall exactly what time, but Carl, he works the graveyard shift. Carl is Becky's brother, so he goes to work. So then Becky and her friend are just hanging out at the house alone, and they decide they're going to go kind of do some stuff. They're going to go get some ice cream, cigarettes, whatever, and they're thinking they're gone for like 30 minutes, but they end up being gone for quite a while. But anyways, they come back to the house. Becky's friend leaves, and so Becky's just home alone. She is also in the process of moving, so she's got a bunch of stuff packed up because that's why her friend was around. She was helping her pack boxes, so she's got boxes full of stuff in her house. There's boxes everywhere filled with stuff. So Becky's now by herself at home, and she's kind of exhausted for the day. So she is moving, she's packing, so her house is kind of awry. So I'm guessing that her bed is packed because she ends up falling asleep basically on the kitchen floor, probably like a sleeping bag or something, I guess, or maybe it was just a blanket. But she still had a TV, so she was still watching a television, but she's sleeping like on the floor in the kitchen, like a real weird spot.
Yeah, maybe if there's multiple kids from two different families, maybe she didn't even really have her own room in that house anyways, maybe it's just been like we got divorced, I'm staying with my brother, there's not enough room for everybody, he's dealing with all my shit being all over the place, I'm sleeping on the floor, maybe, I don't know.
Definitely. So she's sleeping on the floor, and then some creeper decides he is going to come into the home while she's sleeping, and this is learned later on. So initially when this happens, we don't know this, but I'm just going to tell you the details now. So what we learn is while she's in the house, she's sleeping on the floor. This guy comes into the home. He may or may not have watched her sleep for a while. She's got VH1 on the television. She's watching music videos. And this guy comes into the house, like I said, may or may not have watched her sleep for however long. And then he brutally murders her with a knife.
Ugh.
And he stabs her 58 times.
Oh my God.
58 times. So she was sleeping when he arrived. However, based on like autopsy reports and information, she must have obviously woke up when she was stabbed because she fought for her life and there was traces of like there was
a fight.
Proof. Yeah, there was proof that there was a fight that had happened. And so she fought for her life, but he continuously stabbed her 58 times.
That's so many times. That would take forever. Like,
so many times.
So much time to come to your senses.
Yeah, this guy did not come to his senses. He was in a rage and he just went freaking ape shit and just stabbed and stabbed and stabbed and stabbed. So 58 times. This perpetrator gets away and no evidence is left at the scene. None whatsoever. And so the next morning, Carl comes home, Becky's brother, and he finds the body and he's like, oh my God. And he has previous training. And so he's CPR certified. He knows how to do CPR. So he tries to do CPR. He tries to revive her to no avail. And it's just not happening. So he's the one who makes the 911 call. And he calls it in and he's like, hey, 911, like I just found my sister. She's like unresponsive. Like I need you to get here. And so obviously when the cops show up, they're like, oh my God, this guy's covered in blood. We've got a dead body. So they handcuff him. They put him in the cop car.
Oh, poor Carl.
And so he obviously, he works a graveyard shift. He comes home to this. So he's probably exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's exhausted and he has no idea what happened. He doesn't have a clue what's going on.
And he just found his sister's dead body. Like, you're gonna have a weird adrenaline burst and shock, and who knows how you're gonna respond to that kind of.
Yeah, so he just has no idea, and I can't even imagine what's going through his head, and especially the fact that he gets handcuffed and placed in the back of a police car, so he's kind of a suspect.
Yeah,
and
good they do that. He's covered in blood. And there's a dead body, but at the same time, how traumatizing for him.
Yeah, exactly. Nevertheless, he answered all the questions and the police are like, okay, you just showed up. We know you were at work. Like, there's this case. Like, we know where you were.
He has a good alibi. We know when you left work and how soon you called 911. Like,
yeah, so they were easily able to kind of like check all the boxes and be like, okay. So they just question him and kind of get all the information they can from him, and it really goes nowhere because he's like, I don't know.
He's like, I literally have no idea who would have done that.
Yeah, and so that makes it really rough because nobody really knows. So the cops, they kind of investigate. They try and follow up on things. They look into Becky's background, and they don't find anything that kind of indicates that anybody would be so like upset with her to commit this terrible crime. So they're like,
they say stabbing is like the most intimate kind of murder. Like, that's a real rage response kind of murder. And usually it's when someone has like a deep connection to the person and they're really mad at them for a specific reason that they choose that.
Right. And to be stabbed 57 times.
Yeah, that's like overkill.
That is complete overkill. So the cops are like, all right, well, like, I don't know where we go from here. Like, we don't really have much. There was no, like I said, no evidence, no DNA, nothing left at the scene of the crime. So they couldn't go off of anything. So they continue to kind of like follow leads and get information for a while. But it comes to a point where it's just like, well, I mean, there's nothing left to go on. We don't have any leads. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what has happened, like
Yeah.
who this is, who it could be. So
the case goes cold fast.
Yeah, like within like a couple of months, it goes pretty cold. And I mean, it's still there. Obviously, it's in people's minds, but it's kind of there's other stuff on the plate, and so other things are getting worked on, and this is kind of just sitting because there's
because there's nothing
no
they
leads,
can do.
nothing to go off of.
Terrifying. Like to live in that neighborhood and be like, oh, somebody was just randomly killed and we have no idea who did it.
Yeah, no idea at all. So throughout this process, the cops are like, what the heck? I don't know. So they have nothing to go off of. So it kind of goes cold. And then 2 years later, in 1989, on September 4th,
I was like 5 days old.
What?
I was like 5 days old.
Oh, yeah. September 4th, 1989. So on this day, another terrible, terrible thing happens out of nowhere in the same neighborhood, on the same street. The same street. 2 years later, Joan Heaton, she was 39. Her daughters, Jennifer, 10, and Melissa, 8. They were at home and they were brutally murdered. All 3 of them. They were all stabbed violently. Again, not just like a couple stabs, like upwards of 50 stab wounds for each of them.
Oh, that's terrifying.
When they did the autopsies, they found pieces of knife stuck in their bones, and there was actually knives broken off.
Oh my God.
In the 8-year-old Melissa, there was a knife broken off in her neck where she was stabbed.
That's so sad.
So violent. And
obviously these are related.
Yes. So like quickly after this happens, the cops are like, oh my God, like these have got to be related. They're both overkill stabbings
of women in this neighborhood. Like that's insane.
Yeah, it's the same freaking block. Like these have got to be related. And so they're just like, whoa, okay, what the fuck is going on here? And so they're like, all right, these have got to be related. We got to figure this out because it's like deja vu. This is just a couple houses down on the same street, and all of the victims show signs of putting up a fight.
Oh my God.
It was a very gruesome scene. And again, they look into Joan's, the mom's background, Joan Heaton. They look into her background. Again, there's nothing to kind of point the finger at anybody. Like there's nobody that
random.
Yeah, it's just random. There's no connection that they can make with looking into her background.
What's with you and these like random murders lately, Amber? They're the scariest ones. They're so terrible.
They are the scariest ones. And I don't know why I find them and then I'm like, ooh, okay.
You gonna tell this?
Like I don't know. So deja vu, just a couple houses down.
The worst deja vu ever, Jesus.
Yeah, terrible deja vu. And like I said, there was a 5-inch blade stuck in the youngest daughter's neck. So because of this, the FBI believed that the killer could have cut his hand in the act.
Oh, because the knife broke off.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, maybe we've got something to go off of. So we have to move quickly because we have to figure out, we have got to like interview people.
We have to interview as many people as possible and look at their fucking hands.
Yes, exactly. And so because of how violent this was, it shows that like the killer lacked self-control, and it was obviously an overkill. And so they also believe that the killer may have known the victims, because in this second case with Joan and her two daughters, they were covered up.
Yeah.
So obviously the killer was like, oh, I don't want to look at this. Like, oh, I need to cover this up. Like, I didn't do that. I didn't do it.
It's such a weird mental thing that happens with murderers. Like when they know the person, they cover up their faces usually. It's like
such a weird thing. So again, they don't really have much to go off of, but at this crime scene, they do have a little bit more evidence, because again, they have the broken blade, and they're like, okay, the killer probably cut himself on this. And then in the blood splatter, they also have like a shoe print, but they later realized that it's not actually a shoe print. The killer took off his shoes and was in his socks. So it's a sock print. So it's a footprint in a sock.
So they can get the size of his feet, but
yeah,
they can't match shoes to that.
Right. So they find out from these blood stains that he wears a size 13. That's a big ass foot.
What size shoe does Aaron wear?
He wears size 12.
Just like Aaron's got big feet, right?
Yeah, Aaron has huge feet, but like, yeah, so he's size 12.
I feel like it's big, but it's not like you have to buy specialty shoes big.
Yeah, not yet. Not quite. I think it's like size 14 where you got to start getting specialty shoes.
Yeah, I think like 14 is like the max.
Yeah. So thankfully they've got this to go off of. So the cops are kind of perusing the neighborhood at this point, because they're like, all right, we've got to look, like, it's obviously got to be someone local.
Yeah, because otherwise they wouldn't target this random neighborhood. It would be more spread out.
Right. So they're like, all right,
it's got to be over 6 feet tall. That big of feet? He's probably over 6 feet tall.
So they kind of start getting their list, and they are looking around, and there's this one kid. His name's Craig, and he's a young kid. He's only like 13, or no, he's 15 at this point.
I was like, at the second murder?
No, he's 15 at the second murder. So,
and he has huge feet for a fucking 15-year-old.
Yeah. So they see this kid, and he's just like, in this neighborhood at this time, there was mostly majority white people in this neighborhood. And Craig, he is a black kid in this neighborhood. And so he's one of the few at this time frame. And so his parents, they're doing really, I mean, they're doing well, but they're working freaking hard.
Yeah.
They're both working their asses off.
And they're providing the best life for their family as they can.
Yes, exactly. That was the whole point. They were working their asses off, and they picked this neighborhood, which was primarily white. They wanted to live in this neighborhood because they knew it was a good neighborhood, and they wanted to provide the best for their family.
Good school zone, good connections, good setting your kids up for a good future.
So that's why they lived here. So I'm pretty sure both of his parents worked multiple jobs, and they just kicked their asses to provide the best for their family.
Damn it, Craig.
Yeah, so Craig lives in this nice neighborhood, and he primarily kind of grows up in a white environment, I guess, for lack of a better explanation.
Yeah. He was a minority in the environment, and I mean, it's the late 80s in Rhode Island. I don't know what the demographic overall is there, but that would be a hard way to grow up.
Right. So he grows up, and obviously, I mean, racism is a thing, and we don't really hear much about it in this story until like after the fact. But
I'm sure that family saw so much racism.
Yeah, and we'll hear about some of it from Craig's point of view. But
I mean, not to excuse murdering a bunch of women violently and children, but I'm sure he didn't have an easy life as a large black boy in a white neighborhood.
Yeah, and he is a big boy. He's like pushing 6 feet tall and like 250 pounds at age 13
That's crazy.
or 15. So he's a big kid.
Yeah, that'd be rough.
So he's definitely probably one of the biggest teens in his area.
Oh, I'm sure.
6 feet tall, 200 and pushing 250. That's huge. Anyways, he played sports and things like that. He was on basketball, all of these things. And for the most part, I mean, people recognized him as a respectful kid and things like that. But as the cops are kind of creeping the neighborhood and looking for things and hints, they're like, oh, we know this kid, like, we'll question him and see if he knows anything.
Well, and I'm sure they were like, oh, there's a big black kid in the neighborhood. He's on our top of our list. Like,
well, the thing is, though, before they had even started doing this, the police had reached out to like an FBI profiler and they were like, hey, we've got this going on. Can you help us profile what we should be looking for? Because we've got nothing.
Yeah, that's always so interesting.
And so this profiler was like, all right, well, we think that the killer probably lives in the neighborhood. We think that it's a strong white male within walking distance. So I don't know why they perceived it as a strong white male, but that's what this profiler says.
They probably were just basing that on like the demographics of the area, honestly.
Probably. And so they're like, it's someone who's got issues with the law and someone with like lack of self-control, because obviously they had overkill in these extreme like murders. And they're like, we're also going to be looking for someone with a cut on their hand. So keep that in mind. So like the cops talk to Craig, they see him on the streets and they're like, hey, Craig, blah, 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 whatever. And they're not really like, they don't really suspect him because they're looking for a white male. You know, they're looking for a big, strong white male, not a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old black kid. That's not their profile. So, but they're like, hey, he's in this neighborhood. Maybe he saw something. Maybe we can get something out of him. So they go talk to Craig and they notice immediately he has a bandage on his hand. And they're like, hey, Craig, how'd you get that? What's going on with your hand?
What happened there, buddy?
And he's like, oh, I don't remember the exact story, but I think he basically told him like he was trying to rob a car and he broke a car window. And so he broke this window of this Ford Probe. He was very specific in his details. And he's like, oh, I broke a window, breaking into a car, and I cut my hand.
I love when criminals think, if I lie about breaking another law, they'll think I'm telling the truth. Because why would I lie and say I was breaking the law? So I must be telling the truth, right?
Exactly, 100%.
It's like, well, now they have cause to arrest you, dummy.
Yeah, so they're like, all right, well, I guess you do have a little bit of a questionable background, so maybe we believe this. But again, it's nothing they're going to be like arresting him for and taking him in immediately. So they're like, all right, cool.
Especially when they have this profile and he doesn't fit it.
So they're like, all right, cool. Well, thanks for the information. But again, they don't get very far. So then they decide to take it serious and they're like, okay, we're gonna look into this claim of his broken window and like car robbery. And so they go and they canvass the area and they're like, okay, let's look up reports for like car burglaries for this area and see if there's any reports of broken windows, and there's none. And they go canvass the neighborhood and they don't see any broken glass. And they're like, all right, there's nothing here. And they were like, maybe he didn't know the street, so we'll go a couple blocks out. So they go a couple blocks out and they canvass the area and still nothing. They're like, all right, this kid's full of shit. So one of the cops is like, this guy, he freaking did it. Like, he's guilty as shit. And the other ones are like, he's 15. Like, no fucking way.
And it was probably the same person who did that one 2 years ago. He was 13 then. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Come on.
So they're like, no freaking way. And then, so after the cops look into it and they're like, okay, there's no report of broken car windows. Like, he definitely lied about this story. So they're like, man, they're really conflicted because even though things are adding up, they're still looking for a white male. They're not looking for a teenage black man.
Well, and especially a kid that was that young at the time of the first murder.
Yeah. So,
like, I feel like that would be my biggest holdup looking into this. I mean, like, well, the FBI said this, so yeah, maybe it's not him, but everything else is kind of adding up. But that first murder, he would have been 13 years old. Like, really?
yeah.
No
Yeah.
way. No way a 13-year-old did that.
Right. So they're like, but then a friend of Craig's contacted the police and was like, hey, like, I think you should probably know that Craig was totally bragging about killing Becky Spencer 2 years earlier. Like,
And
in
no one believed him
1987.
because he was 13.
Yeah.
Oh my
But
God.
the friend was like, yeah, he totally told me that he did this, but we were just kids and he was 13. Like, I didn't believe it. Why would I think that he really killed someone? Like, no freaking way.
Yeah.
We were 13.
Yeah.
So obviously he didn't say anything back then because he's like, dude, you're full of shit. You didn't kill a lady. You're dumb.
Yeah, 13-year-olds say dumb shit.
Yeah. But when this kid, obviously he's still probably a kid, when he comes forward to the police, they're like, oh shit, okay. All right. So then okay, I guess we've got enough. Like, we did see Craig with a cut on his hand. We've got this kid coming forward saying that he was bragging about murdering Becky 2 years earlier. And we are pretty positive these two killings are connected. So the police end up going to the Price home, Craig's house, and they go raid the house and they're searching it for any evidence they can find. So it's thoroughly searched, and they end up finding in, I believe, the shed of the house, bloody clothes and like bags of the weapons he used and all kinds of incriminating things, bloody knives and other items they find in the shed. And so they're like, oh, all right. So Craig's immediately arrested. He's 15 at this time. He's immediately arrested because they find all these things. And it doesn't take long. Like, they don't have to pry it out of him. When they get him to the station and they start the interrogation, he confesses all of it. He tells the story of exactly what happened and all he did. He even goes as far as mimicking the cries of the girls while he was killing them.
My God.
Yeah.
That's disturbing. I'm like waiting for you to be like, but it all got thrown out because he was 15 and didn't have a parent present or something.
No, thankfully.
Yeah.
But there are a few things that I was questioning, and it was like a little bit of a, oh my God, really moment, but it all works out. So now they're like, holy shit, we've got our guy. It's 15-year-old. What the hell? And so they're just like trying to figure out why this had happened.
Yeah.
And apparently, according to Craig Price, because he grew up in this primarily white neighborhood and he was basically kind of like whitewashed, I guess. That's my explanation. But I don't really know if that's a great way to explain it. So
I think it makes sense.
Forgive me if it's not.
I think it makes sense. I don't know if it's appropriate, so we apologize if it's not.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not trying to offend anybody with my words, but that's just how I'm explaining it. So hopefully it comes across okay. But basically, this is kind of how I interpret what the police are thinking like interpreting everything as well. So because of this, he kind of claims that he was really subjected to like a lot of racism when he was younger in the area.
100% believe that.
Yeah, so
100%.
So he's like,
I think he still would be to this day. I think racism is so fucking prevalent.
It's way too prevalent.
Yeah.
Racism should be a thing of the past. It shouldn't be continually.
Well, just this
happening.
week, the officer that kneeled on George Floyd's neck was going to trial, and another fucking officer in Milwaukee or wherever shot a black guy just during a traffic stop, to death.
When they were supposed to be using mace,
Or they thought it was their taser, supposedly.
Taser, not mace, taser.
But
how do you get your taser and your gun mixed up?
Because you're a 40-something-year-old white lady and you're scared of black people. Like, legit racism.
Well,
racism is how that happens. Racism
you
is
should
real.
not be a police officer if that's the fact.
If you can't tell the fucking difference between a gun and a taser, yeah, nope. So I believe that he was treated poorly. Living in a white neighborhood.
He was a child, though.
But he was a
that's
big
awful.
kid.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't think he was a child because he's like 6 foot, 240 pounds.
And that's no excuse. If I had a son and he happened to be a big kid, I would be mortified if somebody just treated him terribly. I worry about the kid who lives next door to me. He's an adopted black kid and he's 13. And we live in such a prevalently white area that I worry he's going to be treated poorly his entire life because fucking racism. And he's such a good kid. I just want to protect him forever.
Yeah.
Well, and Trayvon Martin, he was walking home with Skittles in his pocket and he got shot to death by his neighbor. He was a kid. Wasn't he 13? But he was tall and black.
Yeah.
But
not great.
So I don't doubt he was treated horribly, but because it was the 80s too.
Yeah, it was the late 80s. So
that doesn't basically mean he should kill a bunch of people either.
Yeah, no, not even a little. So basically, he ends up saying, in my interpretation, that his exposure to racism at a young age by whites was kind of the breaking factor, I guess. That's not the correct way to put it, really.
Pushed him over an edge.
Yeah, so, there was obviously more to it than that, but this is kind of the backbone of kind of what broke the camel's back, basically. And so, going back to the first murder, Becky, and she lived with her brother, and Craig claims that when he was 13 at the time, he was playing in the street with his friends or whatever, and there was a car that drove by and honked and called him the N-word. And so he was just 13, so he just ignored it and whatever, but it really kind of bothered him. But so he remembered that car and he remembered that face. And apparently the reason why Craig targeted Becky's house was because the person that honked and said those racial slurs to him was her brother Carl, and he recognized him.
But she's not Carl. That's a bad excuse to murder someone.
But she was at the house, so she was at the house where he had seen that car be. So
I don't doubt that